All summer we've been feeding Travis's cattle with buckets. We've been backing the mule up to the grain room by the grain harvester on the right over there. And we've been backing the mule up to the grain room, and we've been loading the buckets back into the back of the mule, and we've been stacking them two layers high for a month or two now, and it's been getting kind of old. So what we did is we switched to using the bucket on the bobcat. We'd pull up with the bobcat and we'd hold the bucket right by the door, and we'd just dump the grain into buckets and then throw it into the bucket itself. So now we decided that's still a little too labor intensive, and it's getting a little old because it's a lot of work for the amount of buckets that we're doing. So what we decided to do was we thought up our own little design for a cattle feeder. Well, this isn't exactly a cattle feeder, but you could say it's kind of like a grain dispenser. Now they make these. However, this is one that we designed, we thought up, and we went up to the welding shop and had them put it together for us. And we've tested it out, and it works really good. Right now I have the end pulled off of the flighting, you can see here, because we got to find hoses to put in the top of it. So I should probably close that up actually. I don't want any dust getting down in there. So here we've got a hydraulic motor, and that sticks to the end of the flighting. And everything on here, we had them designed for us. Up here we got a little hook so that we can feed our hoses through when it comes off the motor. And it hooks up to the bobcat, up to the hydraulic attachment right there. And this is really handy because we feed in bunks. So we still want to keep feeding corn in bunks. We have a grain set up right by the grain silo there, and it grinds our corn for us and everything. We just have to get it out to the cows. So what this feeder will allow us to do is, well, once we get it set up, we haven't got an auger in there yet, but we plan on putting an auger in the feed room, and what it'll do is it'll extend outside, and we'll be able to park this underneath and feed right into the feeder without having to do any more labor-intensive work, because it's good for the arms, but it's bad for the health, you could say. So yeah, we went up and had them make this feeder, and they actually have feeders like this that they make and sell for 3 to 4 times the cost. I believe that they go for $4,000 or $5,000, and this was just a fraction of that cost. You don't have the patented design or whatever, but from what we've done so far, this has been doing us just good enough. And with it being hooked up to the bobcat, we can adjust the speed and the rate that it feeds out, which is nice. Now, if I hop up on top, stick the camera down inside, you'll see that shield in there. So the flighting is below that shield, and what that does is it slows down the rate that the grain goes to the auger. So let's say you fill this baby full, and you got the corn mounted up on top, but there isn't that shield in there. Well, all that pressure is going to be down on the corn, and it's going to be hard on that motor to get it started, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on the outside of the bin. He's out over there. It's going to put a lot of pressure down there. It'll put a lot of pressure on the side of the bin, which isn't really a good thing. So I'm putting that shield in there. It kind of slows down and regulates the flow of corn once you get that auger going, and it just kind of protects the auger from getting in the way to that corn, which it's a very, very smart thing to do, because you don't want to put a lot of pressure on the outside of your bin, because then your corn starts getting ground up, and the flighting starts cutting off the corn, and you can get compaction. It's a recipe for disaster, really. So here's the other end of the flighting. Just got some metal welded on here. What this does is for when the corn comes out of the flooding, right there. It's kind of receded back in because I pulled it out on the other end. The flooding comes to right about here. And once it feeds out, what this shield here is meant to do is to make sure that the corn flows directly downward and it doesn't shoot out the side if you're feeding especially fast. Because since we're feeding into bunks, we just want the corn to fall straight down. So that about sums up this feeder. We haven't put it through its full works yet because we had it running and then we had to take the hoses off because the hoses had a leak. We haven't found hoses that work yet. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out my other videos. We'll see you next time. Here Travis and I are setting up the auger so that we don't have to use buckets to move the grain from the grinder in the silo over to the bobcat. And the way we used to do it is we backed up with the mule and we'd load the buckets directly into the mule, then we'd run over and feed them out by hand. Then we switched over to using the bobcat bucket, and soon we will be using the new feeder that we have. And this is to help kind of streamline the process so we don't have to do as much manual labor. We're going to cut a hole in the wall somewhere in here and stick it up high so that we can just back the feeder right under it.
Which way do I put this thing on? This one?
Here we have an old power cable that used to go over to the windmill that was out in the middle of the driveway over there. And what we're going to use this power cable for is to brace the motor up there and everything back to the roof. That way there isn't as much pressure on the tin over here, because right now there's a lot of weight on this tin because it's kind of torqued in there. But Travis is up cutting a board so that we can stick it between these two boards, and then we're gonna use that to kind of hold the weight rather than have the tin hold the weight.
Well, that should be enough.
What we just put on is molasses. It's pretty much just pure sugar. It's a sweetener so the cows go after it more. The only reason we're really putting it on like this is because, as you can see, the corn looks like a powder. That's because the silo is getting low to the point where it's starting to throw out a lot of that, more of that powdery stuff. And we want to get all that cleaned out before we start filling it up again. So we are dumping it out for the cows in a rush so that we can go ahead and start feeding them better corn.
And I think you said it wrong. I mean, they don't just go after the molasses. They go boo-coo crazy for it.
Yeah, they go nuts for it because once they get a hint of it, they can smell it. It does smell sweet.
Yep.
But they just go nuts.
Hold on, dude.
Yep.